what if I did one interval to rule them all? I like that. It says start at full power, fade to 30-second power, hang on for 60-second power, and just suffer for the rest of the 3 to 5 minutes. My wattage would start as high as I can make it. Then it would fade until the interval is over. While I guess I'll lose some specificity, it seems like I could be really efficient this way.
So actually, before I get to my reply to this, I do want to touch on two things that Lee said. And if it is Lee, hey Lee, super cool that you're sending us a question. Well, I guess I'll lose some specificity. Quite the contrary, what you're describing right here is about as specific as it gets. You've determined exactly what your event requires, and you're addressing exactly those demands. So, but that does make sense in certain contexts. We'll get to that. And then you said it seems like I could be really efficient this way. Time efficient, yes. In terms of training the necessary energy systems, not so much. And I'm going to talk about that right now. Developing multiple energy systems in a single phase of training is already a pretty big ask. And then trying to do all of that in the same workout is a really big ask. So if you look at traditional periodization, which is basically the way we approach it, at TrainerRoad, we use the base, build, and specialty phases of training. And they address this by whittling down the focus gradually. So for instance, you start in the base phase, and it's the most general type of training that's going to benefit pretty much every type of rider. Move on to the build phase, and things get increasingly more specific depending on the demands of the particular events that you're pursuing, that you're working toward. And then we get into that specialty phase. That's when it gets the most specific. And it's in this specialty phase that you'll see workouts just like you're describing, Lee. This actually sounds a lot like, and not exactly the same, but a lot like a race winner, where you go out with a hard surge, you maintain, and then you finish with a bit of a hard surge, repeat ad nauseum. And then in conjunction, maybe with, depending on the plan, the specialty plan you're in the midst of, there are combination workouts that will actually take those race winners and lump them together with something like microbursts. And the idea there was that you're trying numerous times to get away, and then you get away and you're in a small group, and the small group starts attacking itself. That sort of thing. Just scenarios that might apply to each of these specialties. But it does get that specific at some point. And then it's worth mentioning too that if there isn't a workout that is as specific as you'd like it to be, our workout creator is a great way to get hyper specific with what you want to do. Again, I would recommend saving this until the specialty phase, but that workout creator is a very handy tool when it comes to this sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So the issue really is across phases and within the same workout is something I refer to as stimulus dilution. So the more adapted you become to different types of training, the greater the stimulus that's required for further adaptation. You can't just continue doing the same thing and expect your body to keep responding positively. You have to keep upping the demand. So again, if we go back to base, it's pretty general because we're effectively starting with a clean slate. I mean, you probably are bringing some fitness into it, but we're taking this, this moldable ball of clay and starting to form it. Then you move into the build, and it shifts more of the emphasis onto those energy systems that are going to be relied upon depending on, again, what you're doing, whether you're a time trialist or a criterium, and even a criterium rider, and even within that, are you more the sprinter than the breakaway artist, etc. So it gets just a little more specific. And then specialty, by the time you get there, it's assumed that the necessary capabilities are all in place. They might be a bit unrefined, but that's what specialty is for. It's to refine them, to touch them up, and then to start to blend them in ways that are practical and usable in whatever event it is. So in Lee's case, so the question you're saying, if this is all you did, you'd really have to do more and more and more of it. So one week, maybe you have 2 or 3 of these workouts with 5 repeats. Then the next week, it'd have to be 2 or 3 with 6 repeats, or 6, 5, 6. And then the next week, 7, 7, 7. The point is you can't keep escalating that and keep chasing the adaptation, because at some point you're going to come up against the ceiling.
Yeah, and especially when we're talking about something that cascades from an all-out instant effort as hard as you possibly can, all the way down to 5 minutes.
Yep.
That's, you're using a pretty broad range of energy system stress that you're enacting right there. So like you said, bumping up against those limits, since you aren't addressing any one of those in particular, those limits will get hit pretty quick, and they'll stand hard in your way.
And that in and of itself is a perfect illustration of what I mean by stimulus dilution, is you're going to hit it super hard coming out of the gates, and then what are you going to have to draw upon as you're trying to touch up or hit those other energy systems? It's going to be a diluted impact or a diluted stimulus, and therefore a diluted adaptation.
Yeah, I mean, if you even look at something, I know a 3-minute interval may not seem particularly long, especially to steady state athletes that are listening to this, but even a 3-minute interval, if you go out as hard as you can at the start of a 3-minute interval, and then you just hang on for the rest of it, I guarantee you're going to have a higher average power if you try to hit a target that's stable, something like 120% all the way across. It's going to be tougher for you to actually hit that 120% average if you just went for 3 minutes, because once again, we're talking about a cascading draw across those energy systems. You're not just, focusing specifically on one. And this is like, I think mountain bikers in particular are really guilty of this sort of thing a lot of the time, because of the fact that terrain already makes you work so hard, many cases, right? It's so steep. So then as a result, you end up, or even like, hilly terrain, I don't know, you live in like Vermont and spots like that where it's just extremely like constant steep rollers, right? Whatever terrain you're on, you can kind of fall into this trap where all of your rides actually emulate this to a certain degree. And while you don't have any specific objectives with your training, it ends up wearing you down, because this sort of stuff enacts a lot of stress, but it's just not specific stress. So then it makes it really tough when you actually have to be specific outside of those rides. It can be hard. So
yeah, I do want to say this is a very usable interval format, but it would have to be timed really appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
If you like this video, make sure you give us a thumbs up.
If you didn't like this video, you can give it a thumbs down, but let us know what you would have done differently in the comments below.
If you want to see more of these videos, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you want to become a faster cyclist, check out TrainerRoad.com.
Do it.
If you think I have better hair than Jonathan, give it a thumbs up. If not, leave a comment.
My hair is better than his.